Welcome back. I'll give everybody a minute to trickle in here, but welcome to session 3 of the 2024 iTree Academy. Hopefully you've been able to join us for one of the previous 2 sessions, but if not, welcome, and you can always go back and catch up on what you think you might have missed, but you're also welcome at any time to join us for sessions that are of particular interest to you. At any rate, glad you're all able to be here. We're going to take a step back today in session 3. A step back from taking a look at the benefits we can see from individual trees, and we'll start to take a look at how to assess canopy and the benefits of canopy cover over larger spaces. So I wanted to just first of all, our quick reminders that all of the information that we're presenting for these sessions are available on the Academy webpage at itreetools.org. Sessions 1 and 2 have both been posted, including the videos, if you wanted to go back and look at any of the demonstrations again, or again, to catch up. So I wanted to remind everybody quickly that particularly if you've been joining us each week, we do not have a session next week. And that's just, we're exactly in the middle. It's going to give us a little bit of a break. But as a reminder, we will be hosting iTree quote unquote office hours next week, not on Wednesday, but on Thursday. And what we usually do with that hour is encourage people to either bring questions they've encountered when working with a project, or if they need some help working through the interface or remembering a step. Everybody who has registered for the Academy will receive an email through our newsletter letting you know how to access those office hours. But just to give yourself a little reminder, we don't have a meeting next week, but next Thursday, everyone is welcome to join us for those office hours. Just a reminder again to use the chat today for questions. We do try to get to as many of those in real time as we can. We will also make every effort to stay for an additional 10 to 15 minutes after the session close. We understand that some of you will need to jump at the end of the hour, but if anybody has any burning questions or wants to stick around, we can do that as well. And since many of you are, seeking certificates of completion or CEUs for this program, just again, all of those will be distributed once the Academy series has completed. So we know that you're looking for those, and we're keeping track of the attendance at these live sessions in order to do that. So I want to quickly bring us back around to just, again, the plan for today. We're going to take a closer look at one of the iTree tools today, closer than some of the ones we've had a chance to do so far. And this is another one of our online tools. You can access this from any browser, but you do need an internet connection to use it. And iTree, we're going to demonstrate iTree Canopy as well as this particular tool's capacity to look at and to analyze the extent of your canopy cover and your land cover over time. That's just a little trick that we do with Google Earth. But basically what iTree Canopy is doing is it's incorporating Google imagery to give you a look at the land cover with a random point sample, and we'll go over briefly how that works. So based on the amount of area that you are able to identify in your area of interest, if it's covered by canopy, we can then identify that, those benefits can be valued for the larger area. Again, so this is just, our comprehensive breakdown of how these tools all work together. And last week we were essentially looking at the tools that work to assess the benefits for individual trees. So you're looking at the relative health, the species, and the size of those trees to break down the benefits. What we're going to take a look at today is, again, these larger area cover assessment tools, but another an indicator that everything here that is tagged with a red asterisk are the tools that are available internationally. And iTree Canopy is one of those. We have worked with many countries and people with many different types of projects to help them understand how to utilize iTree Canopy in their countries. Do be aware that there are very specific considerations that you want to keep in mind when you are using these tools outside of the United States. We're not really going to focus on those or detail those primarily in this session today, but there's information online how to proceed when you're thinking about that outside of the US, and you can always contact us to learn more. And again, thinking about these relationships, iTree Eco being our keystone tool, it's where all of the most, the current science goes first. And it's what all of the other tools call upon to make these benefits assessments. And because of the information we have in Eco, it drives the information that's available across the United States, and it can be assessed on a per unit basis. So those formulas or multipliers for your assessment of canopy cover can be applied then to identify and value those benefits that we know come from trees. So again, we're looking primarily at these online tools using these multipliers, our iTree Canopy today. We are also going to take a brief look at OurTrees, which is a little bit more straightforward at the end of today's session. And then in week 4, we're going to go ahead and take a look at iTree Landscape as well. But when we think about what iTree Canopy offers, it's extracting the information that you're using or assessing from your survey of the Google image to go ahead and calculate what that means it knows based on how much canopy cover you can see in relation to the other cover classes you might be looking at. It can then say, based on where you are and based on what we know about benefits, it can apply those multipliers to the coverage that you've assessed, and you can then take a look at the value of those benefits. And why you might want to do this is to maybe start thinking about the ways that measuring your tree canopy can help you achieve other goals, right? So it's going to let you set a baseline, if nothing else. It's saying for this particular Google image, we can see this much canopy up against, in our location up against these other competing land covers or other existing land covers. They're not all competing, but it allows you to say, where do you want something to look different? Where might you want more canopy? Where might you want more benefits? If you're thinking about goals that have you looking at distribution of your canopy, these are the things that this tool is going to allow you to take a look at. But it helps to then be able to demonstrate these ecosystem benefits at this scale so that you can talk to decision makers or other policy people or just other community members about what this looks like for where you are. Again, what this tool is aiming to do is set up a random point sample across the Google image for an area that you've defined. And as it lays out that random point sample, you'll have the chance to go to each of those points on the map and identify what you can see in the aerial image. So if you can see a building, if you can see a road, or if you can see grass, those are all things that you might identify in addition to trees. But then once you've identified the land cover that you have for an entire area, which you've already identified, it can then utilize those benefit multipliers to achieve the estimates for the benefits that your canopy is providing. And these methodologies do exist in the online resources that you can grab at our website. And just a couple of examples, this can allow you to then break down different comparable geographies, right? Maybe you're trying to look across a city or cities in proximity to one another, or you can break it down to things like neighborhoods and watersheds. But in trying to assess what you have, it can help you start to think about, how do I manage it? Because that's always, that baseline can be your first step in terms of looking at the bigger picture. And this is an example out of the United Kingdom where they were looking at wards across London. They turned this into a citizen science project. So it had a number of different levels of engagement with particular communities, but it allowed people to take a look at the canopy cover in adjacent locations and survey those wards. And it allowed them to then set different goals, or it gave them something to work with to start to parse that out. We will also take a look at the way that this tool, once you have that baseline, can allow you to look at change over time. So if, for example, you have your Canopy survey done with the current Google Earth image, we'll talk a little bit about how to find out what year that is. But let's say the most recent image in there is from 2018. The results and the random point survey that you generate with Canopy can be pulled up in Google Earth, which is what allows you to then access Google's entire series of historic imagery. And by going back to look at change and compare and contrast change over time, you can start to think about, again, those goals, whether or not you're meeting goals that might have been established across those timelines, but also, are you losing canopy? Where are you gaining canopy? How can that help you understand what you can see on the ground, whether or not your goals are trying to plant new trees or continue managing, advocate for managing the ones that exist. This can be a great, a way to reach out with public awareness or as an educational factor as well, an educational tool, just by virtue of being able to visually and, take a look at this information as a way to help explain some canopy goals. So the key features that we're going to, think about today, we're going to, it's a pretty flexible program. You can definitely choose whichever a variety of land covers that you want to take a look at. You're going to be getting a precise statistical survey result. And it'll also provide you with a little bit of a standard error. Sometimes that's not necessarily dependent upon how many points you do, but the overall diversity of land cover that you're experiencing in the area. And again, it's not necessarily about the size of the location, but that standard error is also turned around. This is something that you can do pretty quickly. Whether or not you need a quick snapshot of, a location or your particular project, property, or a bigger city. These are things that you can go in and, like in an afternoon, you can come back with some results to get you thinking and get you started. But again, it's about establishing that baseline goal, and the place to start is then how you can think about where you want to go next. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Eric, who's going to drive us through the tool. Thanks, Eric. You're muted. Sorry, Eric.
I'm going to start again. I just want to wish you all a good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are tuning in throughout the country for this iTree Canopy demonstration. As Krista pointed out, and it's one thing I learned a long time ago, if you want to manage something, you have to be able to measure it so that you can assess progress, or maybe you aren't doing as well as you thought you were doing. And iTree Canopy is a great tool to use for carbon, stormwater, and pollution removal estimates for a quick analysis of an area that you're interested in. Like a lot of our iTree tools, it has a lot of features and ways to customize and way to do it yourself. But one of the things I do emphasize when going down through any of these exercises, that it's helpful to have objectives, or what are you trying to accomplish, so that you can better define what you're trying to measure and then manage. iTree Canopy is an easy one to use with training, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But half a day to a day to do about 500 to 1,000 points. That's where I find, given a certain land cover diversity, that we get our standard error of the proportion down. And that's really all it is standard error of the proportion. So it gives me a bit of an understanding of what my error bounds are and what I'm analyzing, which is also very helpful. And that came from a lot of our experience working here in the Forest Service when dealing with this at the beginning, 16, 17, 20 years ago. we had a lot of high or very coarse resolution land cover data, and that's not very good for small scale or for local scale. So we started doing a lot of photo interpretation to get a better handle on what was actually out there. This process allowed to do that with some statistical reasonability, and then we were able to move on with our projects. The other thing that Krista pointed out is that while we use this a lot for tree canopy and to assess those benefits, you can also use it as a land cover tool if you're assessing change for land cover and if high resolution land cover isn't available for your area or is way too expensive. I'm about to enter into the demonstration, but I just want to make sure I put you at ease. This is a drink with a fire hose, so to speak, that I'm going to go through for the next 25 minutes, which means it'll be a lot of information very quickly and maybe somewhat overwhelmingly. So please just take a moment to relax, just watch the demonstration, and realize that this will take some additional training, some additional learning, both from the photo interpretation side, but also maybe from learning the tools. The other nice feature about the iTree suite and how it's set up is there is tons of helpful text, help, videos, and other educational materials that can help you understand this a little bit better and get into the project that you're interested in. The first thing I want to do is just make sure I point out that on the web page where you come into it, it is on our front page because it is a very commonly used tool, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. I can access the tool from here or here, and if you want to understand a little bit on how to use it, you can check out our David Bologniar's video at this link right here. So let me dive in. I also want to make sure that I explain, like a lot of our tools, we have, again, lots of helpful text on the page. You'll notice there's an example streaming here below, with some examples on how to do these things. But more importantly, I just want to make sure I identify the feedback button. This gives us an opportunity for you to communicate with us as to, suggestions you have for the tool. Are there any bugs that you're encountering? And you'll see that down here, you have a couple different options. But the other thing I want to emphasize is we are always interested in hearing about your projects out there. And we love to share those on the website and in our forums to spread the word of iTree and how it works for other folks. So please make sure you take advantage of those things. I also want to point out that a lot of, we have this opportunity here to both save and start a new project. One of the problems with the internet is that it could go in and out at any given time. So I will show you and even demonstrate how I save things to make sure that I'm keeping my work stable before I end up losing the internet or something like that. And then a little bit later, Krista will explain the change analysis, but we've got our configurations here. And again, always helpful to check out the example project if you want to learn more about the project, right? The other thing to point out is that message that was at the top, and I know it went quickly, but because it is an internet program, you also will fill up your cache with a lot of stuff. So the one thing I'm always careful to do as well is make sure I'm always starting over so that I can clear the cache. Other things to point out on the web page here are the license agreement. We've got our web page. Again, as Krista explained earlier, if you are a nation country that's interested in doing work that's not currently supported, reach out to our folks and maybe we can work something out with partnerships. The other is I'm a big fan of step-by-step directions. That's how I was raised, so I appreciate text step-by-step directions. You'll find references for iTree Canopy here, including when we created this a long time ago. Additional information is also available in the Understanding iTree document. But I did want to see this really quick, so we got that one. And of course, we have our video learning. So again, if you lately I've been using this tool a bit, so I'm more comfortable with it, but maybe there might be 6 months that go by, I don't use it. I may actually take advantage of the same thing you all are when I'm checking out these tools and checking out the videos that are available to me. And in addition to the videos about running the project, or running iTree Canopy, you'll also find some very helpful videos in here on doing point interpretation or even working on that change analysis, or what we're going to talk about a little bit soon, which is how do you identify the date of the image that you're looking at. So I'm going to start again, and let's get right into it. Make sure, again, I'm cleaning my cache, and I'll get started. And there are 3 different ways you can enter an area of interest in Canopy. The first is using our canned boundaries. The second is loading a shapefile that you have. And the last, and the one that I'll demonstrate more thoroughly, will be the draw your own boundary. So the first thing I want to do is just zoom into Syracuse. That's where we'll be working with the demonstration and where we're located here in Syracuse. And I just want to make sure I can point out to you that, all I have to do is click these on and I can actually get any of the 2010 census. We plan on updating all of this with 2020 sometime in the future. Down here at the very bottom are some community grounds. They're more in a beta format and they may not necessarily reflect what's available in the area. But I do tend to like a lot of these, like the watersheds and the census, because that's how a lot of our analysis is done. The one that I really want to show you, though, and it's relatively new to Canopy, is the climate and economic justice tools that were provided by the White House in determining the census tracts that are most vulnerable and need the most assistance in terms of urban and community forestry funding. So it's as easy as coming down here and just selecting which census tracts I want to evaluate. The only thing I would caution you on, and I made a very strategic decision in doing this, but I turned off a lot of these because iTree Canopy does have a small issue with multiple selected polygons. So you can end up accidentally clicking on overlapping polygons, and when the random point distribution occurs, it'll occur over that combined space and maybe not necessarily the analysis you're looking for. You can also treat, 2 different polygons as one project, but they may not be contiguous. So if I remove this one and add this one over here, I hit the select button. Oops. I can select those polygons. But again, if I do the point interpretation, it's going to include both areas in that total analysis, and that may not be what I'm interested in. If I'm doing comparisons, I'm going to do one census tract at a time, complete the analysis, and then compare them. So I'll remove those. Oops, I'm going to start over because that's probably the easiest thing to do with FRAS, right? Because again, it's an internet operated program. I'm comfortable with that. I'll just start over. If I were working on a project, I may decide to, I would make sure I would save it before that point, but I'm going to zoom back into Syracuse so I can show you a shapefile. Actually, I don't even have to do that. We'll do it automatically. So a good scenario or a thoughtful scenario might be the university neighborhood that's just to the east of us here in Syracuse. They have some extra money that they would like to allocate towards planting, and maybe they want to know where they've come from since 2003, or maybe they want to see and track how things are moving into the future. I can load a shapefile boundary at this point, and you'll see it in my folder all ready to go. That's because I canned it for this demonstration. But the other thing to emphasize is I put the nomenclature on here for a geographic coordinate system. A geographic coordinate system is required for iTree Canopy, so we have to make sure that that's there. If you're not understanding that completely, please touch base with your GIS folks and they can help you out. But it's as easy as uploading the shapefile of interest. And again, if I were to start on the next step, away I would go in doing my points. The other thing I should point out, and it's again something I'm going to probably emphasize a few times, is the helpful text that's even available with each one of these steps. It just keeps you straight as you're going along your way. That's all. All right, so now I'm going to move into the demonstration where we'll actually draw some points. So again, I'm going to do a new and start over just to make sure I clean my cache of all the information. I'm going to zoom into Syracuse, New York. And then the other thing I'm going to point out is that we're going to give you a hypothetical here. So back to what I was saying about the objectives, how to manage. So if we're managing for canopy improvement, if we're managing for other things that we're interested in, Canopy is a great tool for that. But we do have to have our objectives in mind before we figure out, what are the measurements I want to use to assess. So in this hypothetical scenario, we're going to pretend that Pioneer Homes, which is a part of the Syracuse Housing Authority and one of the oldest public housing projects in the country, is going through some transitions. We know in the next few years, they're going to eliminate the I-81 bridge in downtown Syracuse, which will open up more space. They're going to do a lot more redesign, but maybe for now, they're interested in making sure they get more canopy into their environment. So I'm going to zoom in down here to the area where this is located. The other thing to point out is where Google Maps won't always give you the map image or the map image date. I use Google Earth Pro to get that date. I know that it's July 14th, 2022 for this one, and I did that using Google Earth. There'll be a little bit of explanation on that from Krista later, but more importantly, there's also a resource available on the web to help you do that. I think Jason put the video together to help you find that. So you get that opportunity as well. And then frankly, it's as easy as starting to draw. So I'm going to start up here in the corner and I'm just going to start clicking around to make sure I get my boundaries the way I want them. Now, if I make a mistake with a vertice, I didn't want to put that there, I can just simply click back on it, exit back out, and continue my drawing of the polygon. And again, I'm just trying to do a rough one for this demonstration, but you can see that you can add a lot more vertices if you want more precision. And again, I can zoom in and zoom out if I want to make sure that that's a little bit better. My next step also includes a lot of great customizable options by OurTrees. So the two default land cover classes, and this is mostly from our experience doing a lot of this work, is the basic land cover, where we included a few different breakouts. Or more commonly, I tend to do a lot of these, which are the tree, non-tree, because really all I'm trying to do is measure the canopy and then get the estimates that I'm interested in, and then for comparison back and forth. But the neat thing about these things too is we can actually customize them, and I'm going to show you based on the scenario for Pioneer Homes. So Pioneer Homes is not only interested in canopy, but they may be interested in a couple other resources in their area. So I'm going to identify them here. Additionally, they're going to be offered hypothetically some money for stormwater credit and some carbon credits as well, and I'll show you how you can adjust those. So notice down here we can add, we can edit, we can throw away or delete. I know they want to break down impervious other, so I'm going to delete that here. And then I'm going to add in a couple more that they were interested in. So in an allocation of space, they were actually more interested in breaking out the impervious walkways from other, or from roads, or from building. So I typed that in up here. My description is any metadata that you want to put in there. I'm not going to do this for the demonstration purposes, but if you work in an office with lots of folks doing this, you might want to put a small description as to what that means. But the abbreviation I do have to put in there for my coding later. I have the option of calling this land cover tree cover. If you say yes, it will be included in all of the benefit estimations that you're interested in Canopy. If you hit no, it will not. And that's kind of important, so that if you're strictly going after trees, that's great. But every once in a while, we have to do woody wetlands, for example. So I may classify a woody wetland as also tree cover. And then, of course, I want to give this a fun color so that it stands out. I'm going to do a couple more because they're, parking. We're always paying for parking. So maybe they're interested in seeing how much there really is and whether they can go with or without. I'll give that another color just to make sure that it stands out. And last, because they are a housing complex, they're interested in the impervious recreational facilities that might be there too. And again, I'm just going to do a quick abbreviation. It's not tree cover, and I'll give that a fun color. I can change the colors over here as well. I tend to like a darker shade for tree and shrub, so I'm going to change that here. and make the grass and herbaceous a little bit lighter so that it stands out. And again, all that gets put in here. And the good news is you get to save it. So one of the easiest things to do is to make sure you save these for future reference. I'm just going to call this Pioneer Homes land cover classes according to the way I wanted to view them. I'm going to throw them into my folder here so I can get them back later. Now I've got them set up for future projects as well. But if I also decide that I want to default, sure, I can go back to basic land cover. Notice that it restores all the original values. I don't want to do that. I want my original one. So I'm going to load in my classes here again. And notice that it'll go right back to what I had determined before. And again, note the helpful text at the top of the page, which helps me do each step. I'll move on to the next step, which is the benefit configuration. Again, we have a few options here. You can customize some of these as well. Notice that we do have some countries where there are preloaded benefits for, and again, if you're interested, please reach out. But we are in New York State, Onondaga County, and you'll notice here to the right, the selected locations are broken down by all, rural, or urban. All is an area weighted average. Rural are the rural benefits that would be accrued, and urban are the urban benefits accrued. And we've done this analysis a long time ago because urban tends to be a little bit of a higher benefit value simply because that's where the people are. And a lot of our economic values for benefits are related to health outcomes. So I know that we're an urban area. I'm going to click that box right there. This is Pioneer Homes. We're working in the United States. So we're going to keep the units in dollars and English or imperial, but notice that you do have the option to go metric. And frankly, if I were to do this maybe on this college campus where folks are more used to using those scientific measurements, I may change it to metric so that it makes more sense for folks that are doing that kind of work. Again, I suggested that the hypothetical might be that Pioneer Homes might get a little extra money for their planting if they show or can demonstrate maybe some benefit to stormwater and also to carbon. I can change any of these values now if I wish, but I'm going to go to hydrological, and it's easy as double clicking here. Oops, first I have to take off this one. I apologize. So this is the default, use benefits from selected locations. I'm going to turn that off. Now I have my editing ability. And let's just say they can get $5 per unit for that stormwater. I'll update it there. There it is showing up over here. And let's say in carbon, well, they're going to get 25 bucks per equivalent units of carbon dioxide. Also, I can edit a lot of these as well. The one thing I also want to point out is that because I am changing my benefit, oh, you can go up and down with this guy too over here, but I'm going to put that back in here and then save this. So I'm going to call this Pioneer Homes benefit values. Saves it back into my folder. So again, if I'm not really interested in doing it in the customized fashion, I can always revert back to use benefits from selected locations. It reverts back to the original values, but I don't want those. I want the ones that I customized. So I'll throw those back in here. Ta-da. And it should restore my values back to what they were, and I'm seeing that already. Notice again, helpful text at the top to keep me going through the directions. And that even becomes helpful over here because it kind of helps me understand what I'll be looking at in a minute, which is a crosshatch that I'll be looking for. So from this point on, it's a little bit of training in point interpretation. But again, I pointed out that this will not be training in that, and it will take some experience. It will take some learning, but we've got great resources for you on the website that you can use at your convenience. But really, it is as easy as starting to click the first button. It'll zoom in. I see the crosshatches there. That's one of the classes I called an impervious road, and I save and keep going. So I'm just going to click on a few of these before I show you a few other things, grass herbaceous. And again, I've done this a lot, so I'm going to probably fly through a lot of this. I'm actually going to give that the impervious road designation because I'll making sure that I'm trying to pay attention to the parking as well and walkways and recreation. You can see that this is an area that doesn't have, unfortunately, a lot of canopy, but we're going to try to add some hopefully in this next project, right? Here's a good place to stop right now and talk a little bit about parallax, shadowing, and leaf-off imagery. So again, because a photograph is a two-dimensional image representing three-dimensional space, you can't help getting around lean on buildings like this, right? So that's the wall, and up here we have the shadow. My rule with an impervious building is anything on the structure. So even if the point fell on this wall, I'm still going to call that impervious building. If it falls up here in the shadow, I'm going to have a harder time. But based on the clues around it, I can tell you it's grass herbaceous. So I would call that grass herbaceous. Depending upon your experience and ability to see through these things, you'll have, better, worse results. But the more you do, the better you get at this, and especially using some of those cues. Now I'm going to just scroll out here because I know where there's a dead tree in here that I can use as an example. And I'll zoom in here. And generally, for a lot of us that do this over and over and over again, we don't always get the pretty imagery that's available in Google Maps. And maybe we're doing point interpretation on imagery, or Google Maps has one from November here in the Northeast where the trees are off. We do assume that, if it's got branching like this, it's not dead, and we'll pretend that that's canopy. So I will think about what the canopy would look like here generally, and if the point fell in there, I would indeed call that a tree. Again, we're going for rough estimates based on general multipliers for the canopy. The more detailed stuff is always going to be in eco or even in my tree if you're interested in that. But this is, again, more of a snapshot. So just to give you an idea there. And geez, I don't know where I left off. So I'm just going to save that one and keep going. And it'll locate me a new point somewhere. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to pretend that I screwed up this one. It's a tree shrub and I kept going. Whoopsie. Oh dear. So if I need to go back, I can always go back and edit them simply by clicking on it, changing the designation, which is impervious road, and updating. Let me see here. I'll do a couple more. And so you can see how easy it is to edit. Grass herbaceous. Keep going along until you get as many points as you need. And when I say as many points as you need, what you can look at is right up here in the corner, and this gives you the estimated error of the point interpretation that you're doing, which is based on the number of land cover classes and the number of points that you use. So my job will be to get this error bar down much smaller because I want to have a more reliable measure. But the other thing I'm going to also point out, and again, because we are on the internet, you see me clear my cache a few times. I'm also going to make sure I save this project as well, which is down here. And the easiest way that I do this is just to simply put a nomenclature in that tells me what point I left off on. So in this case, it's Pioneer Homes 8. I save it. And you'll see, you didn't see it in my folder because this is for the demonstration, but typically I'll have, maybe I'll stop every 50 points or so and make sure I save a set, making sure that I get to my end point. So there's a little bit more on that. The other thing that, I want to make sure I show on the report at this point is how tough this looks with only a few points out there. First of all, I didn't cover all the land cover classes I wanted, right? This error bar is huge. And if I look over here and I see that it's 28.57% grass herbaceous cover with a plus or minus 20, that's just the standard error. If I wanted to do a margin of error on a 95% confidence interval, I'd have to multiply that by 2. So then you're plus or minus 40%. Probably not the best analysis to do, so you want to make sure you add points. The other thing to show you is it's maintaining all my multipliers. And this is a huge hint for the homework for this session. And that is to pay attention to all the multipliers that get stored here. And to do the homework, it's just a little bit of algebra to find out, like if I'm at 20% now, what would my benefits be if I had 30%, right? What would my benefits be if I took out let's say I took out a few acres of woods. What would my benefit decline be? And I can do that with a lot of this reporting right here. I'll get to the print part in a minute, but what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to actually open a finished product. And this is kind of like those cooking shows where the recipe goes into the oven and out it comes 5 minutes later, even though it took an hour to bake. So I'm accelerating things a little bit for you all today, but I want to make sure I get this guy in here. That's the final copy. And you can see what a final project looks like in the same area. As you can see, my land cover has been established. My error bars are getting down there really nice. And this is the best part about, well, I've said a few good things about iTree tools. I love the help all along the way. Love the educational resources. But when I was teaching this in class, students absolutely love the automatic report generation because they're not writing it. Now, realize that if you're in a higher end shop, you may decide to do these the way you want to, lifting this information from here and putting it into your own publication software. But honestly, the report is handy enough to work with advocacy groups, city councils, county planners, other foresters to share from, or even the general public for informational purposes. The report has lots of different features on it as well. Um, right here, I can actually change some of my graphics so that I have a nice snappy image of what I used. I find that tends to be somewhat memory intensive, and maybe I don't want to use all the ink in the printer. So I may use a map. And the simple reason why I tend to use maps in a lot of my products is simply to give folks geographical reference so they know where they are and where they're operating in space. Again, notice down here that my standard error has come way down on that first one. So that'd be plus or minus 4% if I thought about it. Not bad, especially for an estimate like this. And again, I can do this from the past using Google Earth imagery that Krista will talk about, or even hold and save a lot of this for the future. So I'm, again, making sure that I save my configuration steps. I'm saving my projects so that I can use that later for those analysis. From the report menu, I can print this, and it is defaulting to what my favorite one is, and that's save as a PDF. It is not a document in the strictest sense, so I'm saving mine as a PDF, so I have a paper copy to have on hand. They all tend to be about 2 pages, but then I have these options over here for footers and background graphics. I'm going to ignore a lot of that for now, and you can see how maybe an image would be a lot busier up here if I didn't use the map. So just some things to consider when you're working with your reports. All right. The last thing I wanted to show you was the other export functions, and this is how you end up doing the change analysis, and that's using Google Earth. But if you're using another GIS, the spreadsheet outputs your longitude, latitude, your land cover call so that you can bring into it a GIS and use it that way. This is not a huge data set, so I don't have to use the zipped version. I think we can get away with 500 points on a KML, so we'll do that. And I'll just put Google Earth for terminology. Hopefully I didn't overwrite something I already have. I do, but that's okay. And then I'll show you this to see how it looks in Google Earth. And there are my points back in there. Again, imagery dates are available down here. You'll notice it does say 7/14/2022, but I also have a historical button. So if I wanted to go back in time and do the interpretation, I could do that. And again, to point out that Google Maps doesn't always have the most recent imagery. The most recent imagery in Syracuse was actually May of 2003, and I can do a quick update if I wanted to do it there. I thank you all for your time and attention. Again, I know that was a lot to absorb in a very short period of time, and I moved through things very quickly. Please take advantage of the resources online. Take your time, spend some time and investment to learn this, and it'll be a quick and easy tool for you to use to do your any urban forest community forest management project. Thank you so much, and I'm going to hand it back over to Krista.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Well done. And I really appreciate the amount of attention that you give to the report. Like you said, Canopy can be, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but it is also pretty straightforward once you understand what the tool is giving you and what the tool is asking of you. Having said that, yes, the report is one of Canopy, in my humble opinion, spits out one of the better reports that the iTree tools offer, just because it is this snapshot of a lot of different things that you can see from the work that you've done. So I do want to go ahead and sort of mostly pick up where Eric left off, with the caveat that he did touch on a couple of things at the very end that I will try to go over, but just, again, this is going to be a process where we want to show you the concept of using your Canopy survey to look at change over time. And there are many nuances and many sorts of ways that practice can make perfect on using these tools, and even just getting a good feel for the comparison and understanding the images that you're looking at. But we do want to give you, a brief look at how this works and why it can be useful, because basically the Canopy tool itself is tapping into the imagery available from Google Maps, and using the platform for this tool, it gives us the same image for your Canopy survey that you would be able to see if you opened up Google Maps on your phone in terms of the most recent image that it's making available. Do be aware that that does not always mean it's the most recent image. One of the things you heard Eric say at the very end was that the most recent image for Syracuse is in 2023. And that doesn't mean Google doesn't have any other images after that, but considering the clarity of the image and considering the timing of the image are things that Google considers when they make public the image for a given location that they have. They want it to be clear, and they want it to be as recent as possible without having cloud cover in it or way too much shadow for it to be useful. So just do keep that in mind. That also means that if you're looking at more than one location, the most recent Google Map image for them may not be from the exact same year. And we'll take a look at how you can see that in Google Earth Pro. But keeping all of these things in mind, and the reasons that you might be interested in using this as a comparison tool, is because you can access these historic images that exist within Google to take the Canopy survey that you've already created, take those points and look at them at a different space in time, essentially making note of any changes, and whether or not that happens to be Canopy that became a parking lot or some other type of impervious or bare ground that was transformed into either recreational or, for other reasons, additional canopy. So it's this way to make a comparison based on what you can see in these images over time using this random sample. But do be aware that that means that essentially you are completing a second canopy survey, which is specific to accessing this outcome. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and come back to Canopy. The file that Eric created at the end, he produced his report, and he saved his Canopy project as a file, in addition to the fact that he then created the KML file, which he then opened in Google. So we're going to incorporate all of those pieces. Now, when I'm in Canopy, what I can do is come over to this open a project option. And since Eric shared this with me a while ago, we're going to go ahead and stick with his project in Syracuse. But now instead of opening an existing project to keep working on it, I'm going to come down to this option that says I want to do a change analysis. And one of the important things here, this is the Syracuse Housing Authority, the iTree Canopy project itself, but I'm accessing this for change analysis be aware that what that means is specifically the random point sample is set. It's so that you don't add any additional points, which would then start to set off your results because the random sample would no longer be complete. So I'm going to say that I want to go ahead and use Eric's existing sample here in Syracuse for my change survey. And the way that I'm going to start that is by looking at Google Earth Pro. So it's important to note at this juncture that Google Earth Pro is in fact separate. There's a downloadable version and there is an online version. Google has, within the last I think 3 years or so, they launched Google Earth as a regular browser item, and that is not that's not the option that will allow you to look at these historic images. So what we want to do is access this Google Earth Pro, which is entirely free if you go to their website, and it's a quick download. But it's something you then use on your desktop. And be aware that some of what we're going to do today, this navigational info box that comes up right at the beginning, has this tips and tricks about how to view locations from the past. So just know that those kinds of resources are available as you're trying to work through how to get these historical images to come into play. So the first thing I'm going to do is think about my setup here. So I'm going to go ahead and, using the file options, remember Eric has already exported his Canopy points to a file that is openable in Google Earth Pro. It's called a KML file. Sometimes you'll see KMZ file. Just remember that they do the same thing. The KMZ happens, it's compressed. So think of zip. But in this case, what I'm going to do is just go back to the KML file that was created for Syracuse, and it reproduces for me each of the points that Eric created. Now note, what it does not do is tell me what the land cover classification was that we gave to these. But what it's going to allow us to do is, using the different images we can now access in Google Earth, we can go back to each one of these points and determine whether or not it is still canopy. Is it tree or non-tree, or has it evolved into something different? So the way I want to do that, and this was actually, I'm going to try to do this while I'm sharing my screen, but I learned this interesting trick the other day. I'm basically going to set up a split screen, and my computer started offering me this automatic way to do it recently. So that's what I'm going to do here. But essentially what I'm doing is resizing my Google Earth image. And I'm also going to do the same thing with, I'm going to make the Canopy survey, where I've also opened the Canopy file. I'm just going to put them side by side, because if you remember, what you're doing is recreating this survey in a way that's going to let you look at each one of these points to see if we have anything different. And within the Canopy, with the Canopy survey that you've set up for change, you have the opportunity to change any of, or update any of these settings if in fact the class has become something different. And you would do that by accessing the same points in the accompanying Google Earth image, so that you can then say, is point number 1 still an impervious walkway? And we can see yes. Having said that, I haven't gone back to how to find the image, but this is the compare and contrast that we're going to do. So what I can start to take a look at is, well, how do I figure out when this particular image that I can see in Canopy, when is that from? And I'm going to steal one of Jason's great analogies, is that as you go to, this is now in the Google Earth Pro side, the way to access those historic images is to pull up this little, it looks like a little arrow that's going in reverse. So it's sort of around a clock is the icon you're looking for. And when you select that, it pulls up a time slider that allows you to see the different images Google has available. So if I start to move back in time, I can see I'm looking at an image from 2022 and see how far this goes. What we were seeing is this, what I like to compare are, and Jason taught me this trick, was where I was going with this. Looking at parked cars or looking at something that you know is familiar or that might change on a regular basis can be one helpful way to sort of identify, okay, I can see that the exact same cars are parked here. So if I come down here, I can now see that this image is actually from July of 2022. And this happened that's, you know, in accordance with the image that I can see in the current day example for Canopy. And as I continue to go back in time in Google Earth on the time slider, you can start to see how those things might start to look a little bit different. And I can see, for example, here I know I have an image from 2019, which I'm seeing down here at the bottom. But then I've definitely got a different time frame than the one that I can see in the modern day image. So I sort of skipped ahead, and one of the examples of a difference that you can see tends to come into play with this section over here in the southeastern part of where we're looking. And again, we're back in 2019 now, but if we continue to go back in time, I discovered that in 2003, this building had actually been removed. And if I look at my modern day image where I can see here's, you know, this setup of the L building and these little like half a Y buildings over here. But in the current day image, which we've assessed is from 2022, this is now an image from 2005, and I can see that that lot is also still empty. And if I go back to 2023, I can see that there used to be a building there. So those are some of the ways where, for example, now if I wanted to go to point 383, I can go forward in my change survey on Canopy. And if I'm looking for point number 383, I can see that when we did this more recently, as Eric did it, this was identified as grass or herbaceous. For my 2003 survey, I would identify this as an impervious building. So what that is going to start to do is it's going to shift the estimates that you get in your report with the change survey analysis. Let's say we completed this in its entirety for this 2003 image. What we would be able to see then is the ways that each of the percentages of land cover that we can see in these spaces has changed over time. And we can start to think a little bit critically about what that might mean for the ways that we're going to consider management going forward. So I want to come back just really quickly to, you know, a couple of slides to say that the different ways that you might see this aren't always just from impervious to canopy and vice versa, but sometimes that happens. We've seen examples of instances where we can, you know, this is a hospital complex that was converted to a high school space. So you do in fact see instances where impervious is turning into something that is non-impervious, you know, that gets rarer all the time. More frequently, what you can see over time is development and adjustments in communities that, you know, more clearly are making changes to the land cover spaces. And again, this can be important for either assessing projects that you know might have been implemented at an earlier time. But again, it's something that can help you start to reframe where you want to go forward. And I think that what I want to do at this juncture, I know that there might be some questions about this. I sort of run out of time. I know that Dave Bloniars is with us today and was going to show us a snapshot of Our Trees, which takes this concept of looking at canopy cover as a unit for a larger geography, and it can do that a little bit more on the fly based on other data that we've used in that system. So be aware that what Dave is about to show us should be pretty quick, and if you need to jump, we totally respect that, and definitely catch up with that on the video. Sorry to take it so long,
Nope.
Dave, but
It's cool.
all
It's
you.
fine. It's not a big deal. Let me see if I can get to, I want to share. Do we see iTree? Do we see the iTree tools?
Yes. Very
Okay,
good.
so yeah, so it's great. Really nice job explaining that, Christian. And it really the change is one of the cool things that we can look at. But early on, we were looking about how you can compare one place to another, and that's what OurTrees will help you to do. So it's another easy tool, and it's not going to take me very long to do this. So you just go to the homepage of iTree, click on OurTrees, and what it'll do is going to look at stormwater, air pollution, and CO2 and give us some numbers. So all I do is go quickly, and I can type in any place here in the US. So I'm going to go to Boston, Mass, in Massachusetts here, and you can see, and so it pulls up a map of Boston, which I guess they own a little bit of the Massachusetts Bay, but I could click on any city here in that metro area, and it pulls up that, so I can do the analysis on any other city. So right now I'm in Lincoln, but let's go back to Boston, and if I can, so there's Boston. I've chosen Boston. We can zoom in and zoom out, and you can look at how it fits into the whole state or into the whole country, and then go get results. And what this is going to do, it's going to just go back to our iTree databases, and which has data from all of the components that we've already looked at. And so here we get a iTree label or a tag, and here it is, the trees in Boston. It's going to tell us a 16% tree cover. So I don't have to go and do everything that Eric showed us, and I can just get this number. So I can save him a lot of time by just using our trees, and you don't have to go through and do those 500 points. And it also tells me that there's the percent of other components, but the most important here is we have $8,199,000 in benefits this year, and here's our CO2 in dollars, but also in pounds and tons. Here's avoided runoff in millions of gallons per year. So all of that is spelled out for you, pretty cool. And I just realized, look at this little error I found. It says there's 112% impervious surfaces, so it's really supposed to be 11.2. So that's a little error, but we've learned by our mistakes. So here's a little thing that I use, especially with younger folks, to better understand things in graphics. But tree shading equivalent to 3,963 pro football fields. The land area covered by impervious surfaces like pavement, 54 square mile parking lot. And then sequestering carbon equals 3,700 gasoline powered cars. And then it talks here about number of incidents of asthma. And then rainfall absorbed by the trees fills almost 270 Olympic sized pools. Then I can go here and look at a lot of other information. So it gives me the population. And this is great for planners, but now I know the population of Boston and 600,000. I can also look at the income overview, and I can look at the median income per capita, things like that. We can look at the median value of homes. We can look at married couples, families, et cetera. And then we can look at how long people have owned a house or had a mortgage. So that gives us a whole bunch of demographic data, which is really cool in one spot. And I've shown this to folks at Boston Planning Department and some of our regional planning authorities, and they love this tool and they use it all the time now. And so the other thing you can do is look at the tree equity score here, and you get a map that produces the environmental justice neighborhoods in Boston. So you can quickly look, and we see that they're concentrated in the southeast area of the city. And then it'll also calculate here a planting priority index, and that takes a few minutes to run. So I already ran it in Boston, and here's the priority index. So this gives us an idea of where we should be planting trees to address the environmental justice high proportions of population that live below the poverty level. It'll go from low to high. So you can see that. And then again, if I zoom in on here, we're going to be able to look at our areas that are disadvantaged or environmental justice neighborhoods. So generally that's the areas that would be planting trees. So that's what our tree does. If I wanted to now, suppose I want to compare Boston's results, I could go back here and I want to compare it with Baltimore. So I just go type in Baltimore, there's that. I go to get results. This gets it on the fly. Watch how quickly this gets the answer. And so now I could actually compare what's going on in Baltimore and Boston, or I want to compare, two towns in my own state. I can do that. And the information is going back to the iTree database. It's pulling in things from census as well as from NOAA, the environmental resources that are all in the database. And like I said, it happens pretty quickly, but it's not happening quickly right now. So Baltimore might be a little bit bigger of an area. I'm not sure why it's taking so long, but it's pretty much instantaneous that this data will come up, and we'll be able to get back to this point here, go back to our story, and there we are. There's Baltimore. So oh, that's Hartford. Well, it doesn't matter where we're going. We can go to anywhere. And so the idea is, yeah, it's still calculating. So I'll just end there because I don't want to waste anybody's time. But try it out, and it really gives you an opportunity here to really share with others what's going on in your community or what's going on in other communities that you're studying or looking at. So I'll end right there, and then I'm going to turn it back over to who's concluding? Krista, are you, or is Jason?
Thanks, Dave. That was really great. You do that faster than I do. And if you're getting anything close to the weather that we're getting today, that probably wasn't, the fact that you couldn't pull up Baltimore right away was probably unrelated. However, excellent example of how iTree does that in a differently simplistic, but then much quicker fashion. It's not exactly that you can get, I'm sorry, what I'm trying to say is that we did have questions about the fact that you can't really upload your own boundary into OurTrees. So those are geographies that are preloaded, and they're great for, general compare and contrast across communities like that. Anytime you have something more specific, Canopy will, be your go-to for looking at those land cover assessments. And in addition, the methodologies are slightly different. Again, those are all, if you want to dig into those are all things that you can discover on